Welcome back to today's podcast. We are talking about sexual assault, forensic nursing. These are your trigger warnings, just to let you know that we'll be talking about sensitive information around sexual assault and how sexual assault evidence is collected. Today, we have Robin Mastico. I'll let her introduce herself, but she is a forensic nurse.
Hi, I'm Robin. I've been a nurse for 14 years. I've been a sexual assault nurse examiner, also known as a SANE, for the last 12 years. And all of that time has been spent here at the Haven.
We want to...
I don't know what you want. I didn't know.
That was a good...
Welcome to Breaking Silence, a space for real conversations, education, and advocacy.
We're your hosts, Tiffany and Taylor, and we work at the Haven Domestic Violence Shelter and Sexual Assault Center in Valdosta, Georgia.
Every day, the Haven supports survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and child abuse. And this podcast is an extension of that mission.
Here, we talk openly about issues that impact our community, break down myths, share facts, and highlight resources that save lives.
So these conversations may be a little heavy, but they're necessary. Our goal is awareness, prevention, and healing.
If you or someone you know needs help, support is available, and you are not alone.
This is Breaking Silence. Let's talk.
Welcome back to the show. Today we are talking about sexual assault kits, evidence collections. This is a trigger warning for anyone who may be sensitive to those topics. We're doing a deep dive. We do have Robin with us today. She is a forensic nurse. She works for the Haven. I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Robin. I've been here for 12 years, about 12 years. I've been a nurse for 14, and I've spent my whole forensic career here at the Haven.
We kind of started together at the same time. So Robin and I both started at the Haven. We've worked with each other for a long time, since really the growth and birth of the forensic program here at the Haven.
We have. I was a contract nurse, meaning that I didn't work here full time. I had a full-time job in the emergency department, and in my off time, I would be on call for the Haven. I would get a call from Taylor. She would give me some information, and then I would respond here to our center, where I would meet the patient. And together, Taylor and I would get a history and talk with the patient, explain what was going to happen, and then we would complete our forensic exam.
Mm-hmm. So give us a little bit more about what you're a forensic nurse. You're specifically a SANE nurse, but in our world, that's forensic nursing. Give us a little bit more information about what that means, what it is.
So the term SANE, sometimes when I say I'm a SANE nurse, it puzzles people. So SANE is an acronym for Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner. But we're really looking, a lot of people in my field, we're looking deeper into what we're calling ourselves, because SANE is a type of forensic nursing. We're forensic nurses, because our scope of practice has grown even since when I started. At one time, we were specific sexual assault nurse examiners. We'd come in, we would talk to someone who was the victim of an assault, and we would collect the evidence. But at the same time, we would be documenting injuries from, say, a domestic violence or strangulation. And so training has really improved. We're focusing more and more on those strangulation. So we're learning a lot. So now our scope of practice has grown, and so we're really kind of looking at being called forensic nurses. But that same component is still there. It's a sexual assault nurse examiner.
So how do you become a SANE nurse? I know there's SANE A and SANE P. Can you kind of break those down and tell us what goes into that?
Sure. Well, first you become a SANE nurse by, they prefer you to be an RN for 2 years. After you achieve your registered nurse, you go to classes and everything. But during that registered nurse part, you're learning how to interact with people. You're learning how to do an assessment on your own. Sane nursing is very autonomous, meaning, especially here, we don't have a doctor here on site. We could be doing an exam at 3 a.m, and as a sexual assault nurse examiner, you've got to have good assessment skills. So that's why they recommend that 2-year RN first. Get your feet
Your
wet.
experience.
Exactly. Then to become a sane, you need to go to more school. It's usually a 40-hour didactic, whether that's in person, or they do a lot of virtual now. They even do hybrid. They do some virtual and in person. They do some live Zoom things. With technology, it's just, there's all different options now. So you do a 40-hour didactic, and then you do clinicals. And part of your clinicals involve law enforcement, involve going to court, where you're observing how things are. You'll do a ride along at whatever time with law enforcement. You may not encounter a victim of a crime, but you kind of get the gist of what they do, what their law enforcement's going through.
Full circle, full scope.
Correct. You go and you watch a few court cases. It teaches you how to kind of poise yourself to go to court. Medical people don't ever really like to go to court, but we can be called to court for anything. You don't have to have collected evidence to be a medical provider and be called to court.
Mm-hmm. And in our job, you want to be called to court. You want your case to make it to court. That's our goal.
Exactly, because then I get to go in and I get to explain to a jury, and I may have to educate a jury on my chart findings. And so those are part of your clinicals, and it's important. And you have to have a certain amount of hours. You have to have a certain amount of hours of preceptorship behind an already established SANE, and before you're, let alone on your first exam. And it's very nerve-wracking. You don't want to miss anything because, this is someone's story that they've come in and told you, and now you need to put the pieces together, document injuries that corroborate that story, or maybe no injuries. So
when you go through all of this training in order to be able to collect the sexual assault kits, what is the sexual assault kit? What's in the sexual assault kit? Give us a rundown of what that collection process and what you use to do that.
So the sexual assault kit, and you may have seen it on TV. They call it a rape kit, but we call it a sexual assault kit. And inside that kit, specifically for our state of Georgia, it's dictated what goes in there by GBI. And we talk with them, what would you like to see collected? So there'll be envelopes in there that may be blank, where we can write on, or there may be envelopes in there that are already pre-printed that have a specific area. There will be swabs in there, which is just like a long Q-tip. And the kits have changed over the years as technology has improved, and the GBI has said, we don't want this anymore. This is better. Yeah, they have evolved. So depending on, I do a good thorough history. I get their medical history first. I get their history of the events that happened as they recall them. And that's going to give me a good idea, too, to where I may or may not be able to find some evidence. We can use an alternate light source, and that can help us know where we might need to swab. An alternate light source, as I might fluoresce something on the patient's body, whether it's saliva, whether it's semen. It could be a peanut butter jelly sandwich that they dripped on their leg. If it fluoresces, chances are I'm going to swab it. Mm-hmm. We're taught in our training how to do those swabs, specifically the technique. And then we let those swabs dry, and then we put them in those envelopes and send them off.
Okay.
We may also collect clothes. And again, we're taught how to collect the evidence, how to document what we've collected. and then how to prepare that evidence for a good collection into the proper paper bag, documented properly, and then we would turn all of that over to law enforcement.
What about the photographs?
Now, the photographs are very important, and we are very fortunate that we have a high-tech camera. It's computerized, it's digital. The photos I can document bruises, I can document injuries like lacerations or abrasions, things of that nature. And sometimes too, I may have that patient come back a few days later because she might walk in, or he may walk in and have no bruises at all, but they tell me the type of trauma they've been through, and I want to see them in a couple of days because, as we know, bruises come up.
Yeah, they change.
They do. They change. And I might want to also, if I think that something may be an injury or it may be part of just that person's body, a part of their anatomy, I'll take a photo of it, and then I may bring them back in a few days to see if there's any healing. If it's healed and it's gone, it was an injury. If it's still there, then this is just part of their anatomy that they may not know that they have.
Right.
So photos are very important. It's important that we know how to photograph. We take a lot of photos. And that can and juries like to see photos.
Yeah.
And they really like to see a photo and have an explanation behind it.
Right. Like when the person that you have in front of you, that victim, that patient that you're working with, by the time it gets to court, will no longer look that way. If there are injuries, they're going to be gone. If they're younger, they're going to look older. So a lot of things changes. I think it's important for a jury to see what we see the day of the assault, or the weeks following.
Exactly. And especially in children, because that case may not go to court until they're into adulthood or young adulthood. If you have a child that something happened to when they were 8 or 9 years old, that case may not see a courtroom until they're 15 or 16.
After puberty.
And a
lot of changes have happened. We
Exactly.
have, so everything that you've explained is advanced. It's I don't want to say newer. I mean, it is new in the grand scheme of like forensics. But it's all the nice cameras. Like even when we started at the Haven, we didn't have the fancy cameras and the light sources. We didn't have the charting that we have now. We didn't have a lot of the resources that we have now. So I do want to talk about how we got here, that history of how we got to the forensics that we're doing now. And even now it's ever changing. It's evolving. It's being added to. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Back all the way. I mean, the whole, not even just sexual assault, but domestic violence in the world that we live in and we work in is relatively new. I mean, we're talking about 80s. We're talking about sexual assault shelters being started in the late 80s.
Exactly.
Even the Haven being started in 86. The people who are involved in starting shelters and starting forensic nursing is still here. Well,
you're exactly right. Because when we think about nursing, let's just talk about nursing in general. Nurses, we get everything. Florence Nightingale was the modern nurse, right? She set the standard for the things that we do. We talk about psychology. We talk about people like Freud, Jung, those people. We read about them. We read about the standards they set. We read about their philosophies and things of that nature. When we talk about forensic nursing, I get to go and see those people talk. I can read books. I can read that were just written, just published. Virginia Lynch, she is the mother of forensic nursing.
Right.
We can see her. We can, if we get to go to the right conference, she could be a keynote speaker. She still has, she still has reach. But also, so it's a science, and we know that science and then we use the technology of DNA collection and what we can get from that's ever changing. We're always finding out more. So that puts it back on us that we have to keep up with that change. So we do things like go to conference and go to classes and everything, and we're being taught by these experts who are writing books. Other nurses who may have started just like us, who they found that this particular technique or this particular approach worked better. They are putting that in our textbooks right now. It just says something about the fact that I can take a training and use a textbook, and my instructor is the one who wrote that textbook.
Right.
It's not someone who went and learned how to teach it. It's someone who did it, said, hey, this needs to be taught, and is out there teaching it.
Right. And that's a lot of what our experience is. And it's really big to be a part of that movement, to learn from the people who are actively in the field, in the movement now, and not reading textbooks and trying to learn what was left of people's research from years ago. Although we still do rely on some of that research.
Of course.
But a lot of the stuff that we're doing is coming from the experts right now that's doing that research and creating our path currently. But to understand how we got here for sexual assault, we really have to go back into history, into while men and women are assaulted, men, women, children, it does not touch any specific race, gender, economic status.
Right.
The majority of assaults do happen to women, so a lot of the women's history ties into rape and sexual assault. And right back to when women were considered property.
Exactly.
They were considered property of their father, and then that property was passed on to a husband. So the laws around what happened to women, they just weren't there. And they didn't start to come around until the 70s into the 80s. We're talking about even for marital rape for women. What is your thoughts on that?
Well, when we talk about marital rape, I've had patients tell me this has been going on for a long time, but it's not rape because we're married.
Right.
And so there are laws against that now, but at one time there were not.
Right.
Meaning that your husband, and we're talking about men and women because that's the basis of all of this, but we're talking about your husband having, I'm not even going to say having sex because it's not sex, because that is consensual.
Right.
But your husband doing what he wants to you.
Right. That mindset of the property and this belongs to me.
Correct. And that he has every right to do that because he is your husband. That marriage license almost gives him the license to you. Everything about you.
Right.
And if you don't act right, and we've seen sex used as a weapon so many times. And if she doesn't give sex, then, then that causes strife at home, where it's a power and control thing, and sex is used as control.
Right. Most definitely. When we are talking about rape and sexual assault, a lot of us have the misconceptions that it's strangers, that it's that stranger danger that we're taught back in school. Stay away from the white van that you see driving through the Walmart parking lot. But that's not the reality. It's family members. It's people within your own household, close friends of the family, people who have access to children in higher power over children. Those are who our perpetrators are, who we're talking about. Right. So we're not talking about strangers. We're talking about family members being assaulted. And a lot of the movement that really triggered what we consider now as marital rape, it wasn't really a thing up until 93 when a lot of the laws started changing.
Well, believe it or not, not being a native Georgian, I am from Maryland, but I've lived in Georgia half of my life. The thing with that is Georgia wasn't even the last state to get rid of marital rape. marital rape really came to a big head in 1993.
Right.
And that is when every state, all 50 states, had it into law what marital rape was considered. But there were a lot of loopholes.
Right.
So this is shocking that we're talking about this. But going back to talk about the history of this, 2024, 2 years ago,
Right.
we finalized, and that was the state of Ohio that finalized closing some of those loopholes on marital rape. So up until 2024, there was still a loophole that allowed a husband to rape his wife and be able to get off.
Right.
We'll pause there for a minute. Just let that sink in. Because that's, I don't know, I get a visceral response to that. Like, it gives me goosebumps to think about that.
And every law that's put into place and change is always a chain reaction or a trigger from someone. There's always some case that triggers the movement. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, so the case that you're alluding to is the big one that was very much socialized. Now, I'll show my age a little bit here because I was a junior in high school when this happened. But I also remember, stories that you would see on, I don't know, we even didn't have Lifetime movies back then. But you watch some of these movies and you start to pick up, oh, this might have triggered that case. But I think the big one that you're alluding to is the Lorena Bobbitt case.
Yep, in 1993.
1993, I was a junior in high school. And of course, we didn't have social media where it was all over the social media, but you did watch the news.
Mm-hmm.
And
which they ran with it. They took her story and did not focus on what it was actually about and just focused on the insanity of everything. But
well, it was sensationalized.
Definitely.
Because, and by the way, I am a forensic nurse. I like to use terms that are appropriate to anatomy.
Right.
So I'm going to say penis. Lorena Bobbitt, while her husband was asleep in bed, took a kitchen knife and cut her husband's penis off.
And threw it out the window.
She got in her car, drove down the road. She did throw it out the window, but she called 911. Yep. And she let them know where she threw it. The first responders, police, did go. They responded there. They searched for it. I can't imagine what it would be like to be the one to find that.
Yep.
They were able to save it, as you would in any kind of trauma with an amputation. You would wrap it up, put it on ice, see what they can do.
Reattach.
And they did.
Reattach.
He did have that reattached, and oddly enough, he used that to his benefit and monetized on it.
Yeah.
And
during the court proceedings of that, I will post a picture, but a lot of people associate her with her testimony. It was a heartbreaking testimony. She demonstrated in her, on the stand in her testimony, how he would strangle her, some of the things that he would do, and the marital rape that happened for years. But as people in this field, that triggered a lot of change for what happens in a marriage outside of family violence. We were already looking into family violence. We were already focusing on DV shelters and building services for that. Marital rape came later. The strangulation that she talked about came even later.
Well, the photo that you're talking about is triggering for anyone who knows kind of what they're looking at, or even a survivor. Because she's literally on the stand, and you can tell just by the way she holds her hands. For those of us who know, we know what part she's talking about at that point. Yep. Because what led her to do that was that he had been raping her. He had been abusing her for a long time.
Strangling her, yes.
Yeah. And she finally,
there was no laws around it. You could, even if you reported it, it wasn't illegal. There was nothing that no one could do. She had took matters into her own hands. Right.
She felt as if she had no other way. And what's powerful to me is that she didn't kill him. She didn't stab him. She took the part that was hurting her. Mm-hmm. You know, that speaks volumes. Let's look at, but she was found not guilty by reason of insanity. And I, just personally, knowing what we know, knowing the psychology of abuse and things of that, I think that case would go a little different today.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean,
with what we know, but we wouldn't.
But it's thanks to her because
right.
of that. I'm not condoning any of this. That's not what I mean. And
it's just the history
but
even history that's dark still gets us to where we are
But
today.
Fortunately, there are places to go now, people to talk to,
laws in place to help prevent or to provide justice and safety.
Right. There are places to go, people who will listen to the story, and people who will try to get that victim the help that they need.
Right. In 1994, so the year after, they started VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act, which helped provide fundings for places like domestic violence shelters and other nonprofits that could request money to help victims just like her situation to help her get out.
Right.
So even funding coming down from the state, from the federal government is just as new as all the rest of it is. So a lot of us might even remember some of these things taking place, that case taking place, where laws started to happen, where communities started building nonprofits, building shelters, building sexual assault centers that can help provide services. And all of that was going really well. We have continued to grow. Not just Georgia, but all over the United States have continued to grow services, continue to do more. Forensics really took off. DNA and evidence collection has really taken off. And then we get to the backlog. We get into sexual assault kits that were all being collected because of these new laws, because of these new forensics, and it created a backlog. Can you tell us a little bit about what the Great Backlog was? Well,
the backlog really just, and for Georgia, I don't know quite what triggered it. It was Grady, correct?
Yes, Grady Hospital.
Grady Hospital. They just seemed to
somebody
come across a whole bunch of kits that had not been turned over to law enforcement. So first of all, let's explain the difference between the way an exam happens. We have lots of different places in Georgia to go for a sexual assault exam. Mm-hmm. If that's going to be an emergency room, where that could happen in an emergency room, or again, we're very fortunate, and I consider myself spoiled because I've had the luxury of having this standalone center. But in the hospitals, you would maybe meet with a SANE, and or it might not have been a SANE back then.
Yeah,
some of those cases that were collected may not even have been a SANE.
Yeah.
But there are instructions in our kit on how to collect, what you need to do. So in the hospital, I can see how that would happen, where they had maybe a sexual assault that came in. Maybe she didn't want to report it to police. She didn't want to let police know. But someone thought, well, let's collect evidence, even if she doesn't want to report it to police, and we've got it. And that kit, they had a system that when you're done with the kit, it's going to go here, especially if a police report wasn't made. Now the police, if a police report is made, or if not, even if a police report isn't made, we have a system set up that the police come and get.
Right. More issues from the past that created better collaboration for the future, better policies, procedures that were put in place because of the backlog. But I did pull it up. There was over 2,400 sexual assault kits from the 90s in Fulton County at Grady Hospital. But just because they found those, that was just where it was triggered. It then kind of spread.
Yeah.
We were finding them everywhere. I wonder what the total case was of how many. It backed us up in crime labs for years.
Yeah, I don't know what the total number was, but I know that, and so that went big into, and also when it comes to what we do, we do have some of our crime shows to thank for kind of promoting what we do and things of that nature. But the biggest one, of course, would be SVU with Detective Olivia Benson, because Mariska Haggerty had a whole big part in helping with that backlog. There was a documentary, I believe it was between her and Joe Biden, that they, when he was vice president, that they started really pushing for some of those, like, we're going to test these kids.
Right, providing that money to do that.
Right.
It's very expensive.
And while this may sound terrible, and, we're saying that this areas, we were affected at Grady, it's really to no fault of anyone, because at the same time, we didn't know. They didn't know.
Right.
It just wasn't being processed, because we worked together as a team, and what am I supposed to do with this?
It's okay. I pulled it up. It said they're estimating for the total number to have reached 400,000 kits, with right at $2 billion is how much it took to get those kits processed and caught up to date. And because of the backlog, because we, again, didn't have the laws to go with the evidence collection, with law enforcement, what to do next, we do now. Like you said, we have those policies and procedures that tell us when we needed to submit, when do they need to be picked up, when do those kits need to be at GBI. So we did have to work through that backlog of, we wasn't getting sexual assault kits back a year minimum.
Right.
After they were being submitted, maybe even closer to 2 years. And now currently it's taken just a couple of months, which is a
huge improvement.
Deal.
But there is still a backlog, and that there's all kinds of factors involved to why there's a backlog. We just took a trip to the GBI here in Moultrie the other day, and it comes down, unfortunately, down to staffing, because they are very selective as to who they have. And people aren't leaving that job because they don't like it. It's just that they are moving out of area.
Right.
So
life happens.
And the thing with that is that you can't just say, hey, I watched the show, I want to, work in DNA. They are very specific, because these are experts upon experts.
Right. And you want the person testing your kit, your evidence, to be well trained and well educated, and
right. We don't want cut rate forensics done here.
Right.
We're not looking, we want the best of the best everywhere you go. And I applaud them for that. But now we are tracking those kits. When they come in and we take a kit, well, let's just go back to me ordering the kits. I order the kits from a company, and then they have a barcode. And when the company sends out 25 kits to me, they have scanned all of those barcodes, that we're sending these kits to the Haven in Valdosta, Georgia. As soon as those kits get in, we scan them saying, we've received these kits.
Right.
Then when I use the kit, I scan it again and saying that I used this kit on this particular patient. And then I hand it off to law enforcement. Right. Law enforcement takes it, and then they are to scan it. So,
mark that they have received it.
And mark that they received it. When law enforcement sends it on to GBI, again, GBI, it's scanned when it comes in, it's scanned when it goes out. GBI receives it, they scan it.
Right.
They process it. They do all of their things. The best part of this is that it includes the patient.
Right. They can track their own sexual assault kits and know where it's at, what step of the process it's in, the whole way from the original collection date all the way up until results are in from GBI, and it'll notify them that the analysis is done.
So it used to be that when we were tracking this, or it would usually just be like when we would be in one of our meetings with the assistant district attorney, we'd be like, we haven't heard anything about this. And he'd look into his log and be like,
nothing.
I don't know where the kid is. I don't, or it's just gotten there, that kind of thing.
A lot of phone calls. Hey, did you submit your kit to GBI yet? Calling GBI. Hey, have you received this kit?
But that's just another one of those technology things that we're using to improve what we do.
Right.
So every day something new is changing.
It is. It's ever evolving.
We could talk about this for a long time.
I know. I do want to get into a few myths before we wrap up the show. We are doing we probably should have started with this. We're doing a 3-part series on all things sexual assault. So we'll do some more deep dives. But myth number 1, if there's no injury, there was no assault.
That's totally not true.
Why?
Well, just to be blunt, you can have an injury with consensual sex and no injury with non-consensual sex. Sometimes it comes down to anatomy. Sometimes it comes down to positioning. Sometimes it comes down to, you immediately think of someone was sexually assaulted and they had to have fought back, right? Mm-hmm. And again, we could get into a deep dive with the neurobiology of trauma and what happens to someone when they're facing a trauma like that. Because sometimes, and a lot of times, they don't fight back. They just let it happen, because to them, if I just let this happen, this is going to be how I make it stop. This is how I'm going to get out of this alive.
Get it over with.
Get it over with. And unfortunately, it's that mindset that will keep people from coming in. Mm-hmm. Because I've had patients say, I didn't do anything. I didn't fight back. And I get to explain to them that that's kind of a survival mechanism that your body does.
Right. I
tried to get up. I tried to leave and I couldn't move. There are some really severe cases. It's, we talk about the brain and fight or flight, but there's one that we forget, and that's the freeze.
Right.
And so, that's what we get to do too.
We see that often.
Yes.
We very often.
And so if I go to court and there are no injuries, again, those photos, I bring those photos in, and, a defense attorney can come up and say, but you don't have any injury here. And I can turn back around and I can explain why there's no injury. Mm-hmm. The human body, it all depends on the person. Everyone is different. The genital area on women is very elastic.
Right. It's doing what it's made to do.
Correct.
And that's why it's so important to have your forensic nurses involved. Even if you do have forensic nurses in your site, in your sexual assault center, it's important to let them have that conversation with law enforcement. Let them have that conversation with your district attorney's office to explain some of these things, because it's not so black and white. Next question. If someone waits to report, is it suspicious? Let me add to that. If someone waits to report or they recant their report, is that suspicious?
No, not at all. My job as a nurse is to be objective. Mm-hmm. So if I get a patient who comes in and tells me a story, or I don't want to say story, comes in and tells me her account of what happened. Okay. And I changed my verbiage on that, because if I say story, then that can be misconstrued as something made up. So I want to change my verbiage, and that's important too. So she tells me her account of what happened. That gives me a roadmap. And I look at injury, and she says, well, this happened 3 days ago, 4 days ago. And yes, in my mind is I'm always like, I wish you had come to me as soon as it happened, because I want people to know that we are here.
Right. There's care, specific care.
But sometimes it's hard to process. There are some cases, especially if it's drug facilitated, they may not know that they were assaulted. I had one case where someone was recorded and they didn't even know that it happened. It was published to Snapchat, and someone else had to let her know that something happened. How terrible. And there's a lot of, I can't believe I let this
Shame.
happen to me.
Yeah, guilt.
I knew I would always be stronger than any of this. Or
I shouldn't have been there.
I shouldn't have been there.
With that person.
I shouldn't have been drinking. This is my fault.
I shouldn't have been dressed that way.
Yeah, and that
heard a
whole
lot of
dress
that.
that way is usually pajamas and a bag,
It sure is.
sweats and a baggy shirt. But it's an internal. So when people don't report right away, there are a lot of reasons. And again, every case is individualized.
Right.
And
We say that often. We never get the same case twice.
and we
Never.
also, we don't talk about those things.
Right. It's so taboo and it's so uncomfortable, and it makes people uncomfortable to talk about these things. And I think it's time for it to not be uncomfortable.
Oh, that's why we're here.
And that we talk about it more. Talk about, especially as advocates who see a wide range, and forensic nurses that see a wide range of different things that are happening, to talk about all the different things that we see, that we can learn from those things and help other people feel
Yes.
comfortable.
Every case teaches you something new.
Right. We're constantly
So I call them patients because my exam is medical. My first and foremost is to make sure that they're safe, that they're stable, that they don't need immediate help. But your job
Is victim, survivor, helping them not only to get through that forensic process, but to essentially be their voice, hold their hand, get them through that whole criminal justice process from the initial report, evidence collection, all the way up until they go to court, however long that may be.
your job. And I know people think like, oh, you're a forensic nurse. That must be awesome. I do have a passion for it. When I tell people I love my job, they kind of look at me sideways, but it gives me,
Yeah, how can you love doing that?
I do,
Yeah.
because I've met someone in a very vulnerable time. Hopefully I'm making them feel safe in a trauma-informed way. And trauma-informed just means that I understand they've been through something, and it's a matter of how I pose my questions when I'm talking to them. It's the fact that I'm going to tell them, if you don't remember everything right now, that's okay. Come back and talk to me later.
Right.
Because memory has a way of protecting us. And so
Definitely.
those things may come back different,
Or out of order.
out of order. And I let them know that that's okay. But I get to do that. I get to help someone in a very vulnerable part of their life. Nobody ever comes to see me on a good day.
Right.
And
But we do see good days.
we do see lots of good days.
Good outcomes. We do see resilience and the ability to overcome and to grow. And that's what makes it all worth it. It's not all darkness, even though we do have a lot of dark days. And we most definitely help people on their darkest day. There's always positive and lights that we deal with too, that
Right.
the outcomes are not always negative.
But you, as an advocate, and I've gotten the opportunity to really watch this now that I've taken a full-time position. As a contract nurse, I would get a call whenever time. We've got a good group of nurses, and at 3:00 in the morning, you could come out. Your advocate is already here.
Right.
And the nurse comes in an objective manner, but not cold. Not cold.
Right.
We come in an objective manner. We get the facts. We collect our evidence. We package the evidence. We do talk to law enforcement. We might get a call from the detective the next day. What did you see? A lot of times it's because it's not my job to tell them this was a rape. That I'm not a detective. It's my job to collect the evidence, give them the history that the patient gave me, and I say the injury or lack thereof matches the history. And then we just go on with that. So my job as the nurse at that point in time is over.
Right.
You stay with the patient all the way to the very end. If and when it goes to court, I may be subpoenaed to come in. I can be subpoenaed. You as the advocate,
We are not.
you actually have a law that helps protect you from being called.
Yep. Client advocate privilege.
And but you get to be with that person, you get to help them get to counseling, things of that nature. I may roll in 3 years later, And I go on the stand, I give my testimony, I talk about my chart, I answer the questions to the best of my ability, and I leave. I don't even get to see the outcome of the case until one of you call me.
And give you an update.
Yeah. So, but now that was as the life of a contract nurse. So now that I'm here full time, I see all the advocates and they're like busy bees in a hive and passionate, and I love it. These advocates are the true rock stars.
Thank you.
I get to do fun sciencey stuff, but they get to do a lot.
Yeah, a lot of frontline work.
It's rewarding.
Yeah. I enjoy it, and I think if you have a passion for helping people and you have a passion for this type of work, it may be for you, because it's definitely a specialty for specific people. And you know if this is not for you, it's not for you. But
or you find out real quick.
Yeah, you do find out real quick this is not for you. Well, thank you, Robin, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You're going to see more of Robin over the next few episodes, even maybe more.
Okay.
So stay compassionate, stay educated, stay informed. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.